I'm sure you've all seen a tree stump, and what it would look like is something like this, okay? And in this case, you'd see the rings of the tree here, but imagine that a tree right beside it has been cut off at eye level, and it has a flat area because our eye level, we know there's a top to it. We know we could put something on there, but we can't see it because it's where the horizon line or our eye level is. Imagine this tree in my imaginary world being cut off and a section has been taken out of that tree. Okay? The branches are held up by this other tree that's beside it, which we'll come to in a minute. And what we're able to see is, remember the rings going here? We can't see the rings here, but we can see the rings here. That's something I need you to keep in mind when we talk about light source. Because if I bring in a light source from one side or the other, and this will be the sunlight, light is going to hit this side of the tree and brighten it up. Remember where we took out outlines, we didn't need that edge, but the tree itself is going to have texture. In this case, it's bark. Okay, and it's going vertically, and I'm doing it as nice as I can to be dark here. But the viewer doesn't see a lot of information from this except texture. As an artist, you have to learn to do your shading in the direction that places the viewer somewhere in the picture that you're working with, so that your strokes will go in this round direction when it's above eye level and straighten out when it's at eye level and go around lower down when it's below eye level. And where that becomes important is if you want to draw something like a branch. A branch drawn out in the side is pretty much straight lines, but as you get further away, you may decide to curve your strokes and show the viewer that that's going out of the picture. And if you notice, there's a gradation to it. If I want to have a branch coming out into the foreground, that's how I have to learn to shade that branch. Okay, in my brush strokes, if it's painting or if it's in pencil, to just shade with the pencil in that direction. It's establishing the form, and if I want it to go into the distance, fading out lines, going very small, and you'd have that if it was behind the tree. If I want something to come right out to me, it may actually be, even though it's the smallest part of that branch, it may become the biggest part of this drawing, and that's called foreshortening. Okay? But I'm not so much talking about the perspective now as I am talking about getting all this information so that it looks like it's lifting off the page. The direction of our shading is important. In this example, we're not using color, but I can show you a little bit better that this light source would come in and hit the front of this tree and obviously lighten it up a little bit. But it would hit this tree and bounce back and give some light source to the back side of the tree. Okay, this is an example of something you can do at home. If you can find a broomstick, chop it into a few pieces, stack a couple cans of soup, whatever it might be, and see if you can figure out the rings. Even something as simple as looking at a mug will allow you to look at it at eye level, below eye level, and above eye level, and see the arc that that circle is going to make. When you see a good artist, or a good piece of art, what you're going to notice is that the artist used the range of values from one end to the other. It's not that they put every value everywhere in the picture. They learned how to move the viewer's eye to a specific spot of the picture by saying, I'm going to use my highest and lowest contrast somewhere here, and everything else from that area is going to fade away. So more and more values, more and more detail, attention, and all that are going to be applied to this area. But since we're talking about values, this is the first principle I want you to understand, that saving your values, the lightest light and your darkest darks for where you want people to look, is a good step at getting to the final product, and a nice final product at that. Most people I come across, like myself at one time, would take ranges of values and feel comfortable in them. Like, I'd find people who would take a certain area and feel really comfortable in and throw in maybe a dark. Or if they're a dark person and they were used to working at this end of the spectrum, or the value scale as I call it, they would have a lot less comfort in this zone. They'd always want to be what I call the dark people. They'd work with a range of maybe this here area, this 30%, and throw in something from the light end. Just as those people from this end might work with their 30% and throw in something from the dark. And there are middle people also. If you think of this as being, this range, as being 10 gradations plus the white of the paper, think of it applying to the finished price of a drawing. And I like to put in other examples. So one of the things I think of is, imagine somebody was offering you $1,000 for this particular drawing. And on every value, they put a $100 bill. And they said, if you use this value, you get to keep that $100. I'm sure you'd strive to get every one of those values in there to get your $100 per section, right? Well, a lot of artists don't do that, and they have drawings that are either too weak, too dark, too middle ground without any of the extremes. I'm really trying to reinforce that it's an important part of the drawing process to use all the values. In this example, I wanted to show you some of my old sketchbooks to show you where I didn't do that, where the face is a lot more washed out than I intended it to be. It even had some help because it got smudged over the years. But drawings like this, where I'd concentrate on more of the detail and getting some darks in certain areas, but we all know, and if I give the example of my hand to this piece of paper, the skin color is not that light. Okay, so she's looking a lot more washed out than she should. Guilty as charged is basically what I'm saying. I do the same thing and I have done the same thing. So now, recognizing that, I've gone a little further, and my recent drawings should have more of the use of values in them than I had before. But check your own work and see if you are using that entire range.